Okay.
We're talking about you,
Let's do it, baby.
All right, so give ourselves a little pause here, and then we'll get going. Well, we're back. We're having coffee with Stephen Paul and Todd Millar, and we are going to talk about, look at this.
Pull Caffé, baby.
Cafe.
That's right.
Pull Caffé. So we got started the other day talking about experience and that we both create experience, but we do it in very different ways, and we're both ridiculously passionate.
Yes.
So please tell us about Pull Caffé, because you have a love for coffee, and that's how we sort of met, because of that love of coffee, because you bought a camera, and then sold me the camera.
That's right.
And you allowed me to come to your cafe, and I checked it out, and tell us the rest.
Here we are. So we did a talk show in 2016 called Coffee with the Millars, and my wife and I, Mary, did this talk show, and it was before podcasts were kind of cool. 2016 was kind of, I guess it was happening, but you would call it a vlog.
It was happening.
Yeah, it was happening. It was more of a vlog. And so we did that, ran it for, I think we did it for about a year, and then we ended up selling the equipment to you. And it was a Blackmagic Ursa, a little mini Ursa.
That's right.
Yeah,
mini Ursa 4.6.
Yep.
I loved it.
I was sad. I was sad to sell it, but I just, I couldn't see myself utilizing that beautiful equipment. So I'll give you a kind of a little bit of a background of how we started in the coffee business. So I started in 1989. I'm not going to I'll make this short.
You're not that old.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You're too kind. You're too kind. So. But my wife and I, we moved to Seattle, and originally from this area, Clark County area, moved to Seattle. She went to art school, and I started building espresso carts. So 89, 90 is when espresso carts sort of happened.
That was part of the story.
Yeah. So it was fun. Espresso carts were kind of like that first, cafes were starting to emerge, and people wanted small little carts on wheels that were like little cabinets.
In the 90s? Yeah. That was like the thing.
That was the thing.
Absolutely.
So I started building those, started importing espresso machines, started selling machines. Then, of course, started roasting coffee. We moved back, and we started doing it together. I had some other business partners. And my wife and I just said, hey, let's be partners and just do this with ourselves.
What was your first machine? What was your first roasting machine?
So first roasting machine was a Probat, which is a German-made company. Probat is, and I always use this analogy to Probat for other companies, because there's a few other companies that build coffee roasters. And coffee roasters are sort of like, if you were to like compare it to a car. So a car, if I said I have the world's oldest Mercedes-Benz, that's a big deal. But we actually have the world's oldest Probat, but my first roaster was a very small Probat, and that wasn't the world's oldest. So I cut my teeth on a Probat.
You are a loyalist.
Yeah, I am. I am.
Yeah.
Although, so then we had one in the interim. But I'll tell you, the getting into the coffee business, it was always about passion for coffee. It made no logical sense. So I tell people in the that I want to get in the industry, don't go in the coffee business. It'll ruin your life. It's a hard way to make a living, but if you love doing it, that's great, which we all obviously did. 2016-ish, we started building our own espresso machines. This is a machine that we hand build. I've been importing machines my whole life, and so my dream was to build a hand-pulled machine. The very first machines I sold in Seattle were hand-pulled, and they still work today. People still have those machines. Wow. They actually last that long. Electronic machines, push a button. They're great, but they have a longevity of about 5 to 10 years, and then you have to replace them because the technology goes away, or it's hard to fix or expensive to fix. So my passion has always been for the hand pulled, not only for the longevity, but also just for it's that experience, which is what we were talking about with you and me. It's always about experience. There's an experience to hand-pulled espresso. Very different than pushing a button.
You are very, very much about experience
yes.
in everything that you do, whether it's building a machine or the flavor of the coffee. You are passionate in every aspect of those things.
I love that. Now, it doesn't make logical sense, and it's not always the best business sense.
I totally understand that.
But I think that if you set out in this world in any entrepreneurial type idea, I think you have to have passion first in order to even get excited about doing it.
Yeah.
Obviously,
you've got to want to do it. Or you hate it and it's awful.
Well, I know people that made a lot of money selling, the most unexciting products, and yes, you can get excited about like toiletries. Maybe you sell toilet paper to big box companies, and you can get excited about anything. I lack that ability to do that, which is a curse. Which is a curse. It's a curse. So the things that I do, I love. So going fast forward, so right around the I think it was 2004. I guess I go back 2004. I started building wood-fired pizza ovens. Got a huge passion for that. I sold a bunch of them. The stainless steel ovens that everybody has in their backyard, believe it or not, I'm the first guy to come out with one of those. So it was a really crazy aha moment. I thought everybody needs a wood-fired pizza oven in their backyard that looks like a barbecue. Before this, there was lots of stone ones, and you had to put like a monument in your backyard. And I was like, I think we need to have something that looks like a barbecue. So I invented this new way of making wood-fired pizza ovens in the backyard, but differently, stainless steel, more modern. And little did I know how popular it would be. But that seed money actually led us to where we're at today. So that money from that idea, which was a crazy idea, we sold quite a few of them. Of course, then the Asian imports knocked us off, which, it's inevitable. But we took that money, that seed money, and we ended up finding the world's oldest coffee roaster. Now, I didn't know it was the world's oldest coffee roaster. I just found, or I thought I was finding.
How in the world do you even start looking for that?
That's not an easy one. So,
there's no way you find it in a barn.
No, I know.
On the internet.
I know. So here's what was the story. So I'm on this forum, and I see have roaster what worth. And in my spare time, I'm always looking for a vintage Probat. That's always been my dream, is to have, but a much bigger one. I wanted a full bagger, or a one bagger they call it, which is 140 pounds. And so my idea was, if I could get a vintage Probat, that would be such a great story, And I didn't know I was getting the world's oldest. I'm not like so cool that I'm like, only the world's oldest will do. That wasn't it.
I have to have.
Yeah. No, it wasn't it. So my wife and I, we found this on the internet, and I started talking to this gentleman, and he says, in his very broken English, he was in Serbia, believe it or not, and he had this vintage roaster, found out it was a Probat, super excited. We started conversing back and forth via email, and he gave us a reasonable deal, although I still spent my life savings on it. It was a lot of money to buy. It was a huge risk.
I was wondering about that, because, it's so big. I've seen it.
It's huge.
It's giant, and not something that you get a couple of friends over and go, hey, can you help me slide it over a little bit? It's giant.
It's 12,000 pounds, so it's heavy.
I had no idea it was that much, but I knew it was.
It's 12,000 pounds. So we get it here. It took a year to get here and a year to restore it. And so the cool thing is, the head restoration manager for Jay Leno's collection, David Cornell, which was a friend of mine, I had sold him, I met him, I sold him a pizza oven, which was funny. So he had retired. Yeah, he retired on Jay's payroll, I think 10 years prior. And Dave was a huge influence for me for inspiring me to restore, taking on this big of a project, because the roaster was in pretty bad shape. So
that's an enormous project.
Huge project. So we got it here, we restored it, and Dave, at the very end, right before I finished it, which was terrible, right before I finished it, I was just testing it, and I called Dave, and this is a sad story, and his wife Bonnie answers the phone, and she says, I'm so sorry, Dave just passed. And I go, oh, and I was so excited to tell him, hey, we did it, we did it. So what was sad is he didn't get to see it actually running at the end, but we got it restored. And I guess things happen. And this is
and the coffee's great. We're drinking it.
We're drinking it, baby.
Slow.
So, but I will say this, and this is I always say this is a public announcement, a service announcement, is if you have your left arm hurts and you have chest pain, do something about it. And that's what happened to Dave. He thought he just had strained his arm. So do something if your left arm hurts. That's kind of like a telltale sign. But yes,
announcement.
Yeah. So we started roasting on it, and we found that the roaster actually has a exceptional flavor that's different. It's not only the world's oldest, it's wood fired, which makes it even different. So most roasters roast with gas. So we talk about coffee roasting. I guess it's funny, because I ask people and they go, I would just assume they're all wood fired. I go, no, we're like maybe one of 5 in the United States that roast with wood.
I didn't know it was that few. I figured it was under 100, but how would I know?
Well, and gas is so easy, right? Turn the switch on. There is some smaller electric ones. And so what's cool about the wood is it adds a different dimension. So if you're passionate about...
Can you explain the flavor?
Yes. So if I were to explain it, we used to roast a gas one and put it right up against the wood one. And this sounds silly, but because the wine people always talk about these funny flavors.
Wait, do I have to?
Yeah, exactly. Buttered toast.
Oh, wait, I didn't.
Buttered toast.
There we go.
Exactly. So buttered toast is what we. It's kind of a buttery flavor, overly used in a lot of flavors. If you were to explain things, but
I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I was trying to, as I asked the question, I was like, how would I explain it? I wouldn't have come up with that, but I can agree with that.
So toasty, buttery,
Yeah.
So, but it's cool. So we also decided at the end of the restoration that we had to really go for it and make our lives even more miserable. So we decided to not only roast in the world's oldest coffee roaster, which we had the factory out, and the CEO of Germany and CEO of USA
There's
came out.
a big article. You can look. Where would they look for that?
So Columbian did an article in the very beginning when we were still on the fence whether or not Columbian newspaper, we were on the fence whether it really was the oldest. And then every Daily Coffee News, Roast Magazine, we've had a lot of different press on the roaster, but the factory came out from Germany.
So
cool. And they actually verified it. The engineers were here. It was crazy. So we decided that we need to take another step further. So we now put our coffee in cans under a vacuum. And the reason I put it in a vacuum is if you put coffee in a bag, you're also filling it with air. And so those bagged coffees you buy in the store and from most roasters, you should use it or buy it within 2 weeks of roasting, which is reasonable.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so our coffee is in a vacuum, a perfect vacuum. So we have vintage canners, and what that does is we end up with not only this really cool.
That is vintage.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
So you.
Exactly. So it's not only like it has a kitchen look. It's cool, but it isn't just for show. It is actually a reason why I put coffee in a can is shelf life. Now I still roast once a week. I still believe in that. I don't pre-roast a whole bunch of coffee. But I did drink some coffee out of a can that I had roasted because we had a smaller canner before we had the big one. And that little can that I had, it was 8 years old, believe it or not. And it was fantastic. Now,
do you have a born-on date?
I do. I usually put that on my test cans. But we actually don't do that on the cans because I roast once a week anyways. So, and under a vacuum, it really doesn't.
So this was a test can that you sat for 8 years?
8 years, because I had bought this little test canner thinking, someday I'd like to can coffee. Completely manual, would not make any business sense at all. But it was fantastic, and I have some test cans that I keep around, and every once in a while I drink them, and I'm just blown away. There's a guy on YouTube, and I forget the guy's name, and he opens up World War II rations and World War I rations and eats them, and it's just fascinating of what a vacuum can do. What a vacuum is just, you remove air, the absence of oxygen, huge. Big improvement on keeping things fresh. Whereas we've forgotten this, it's lost technology. And
you're so passionate about it.
I love it.
You are one of the most passionate people I know. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. You don't only want to do it well, you want to do it exceptionally well.
It's called being insane. When you're insane, you try to do things too much, and you're the same guy, so that's why we get along. So insanity is, but yeah. So anyway, so now we have an Airbnb campground. So we have Camp Little Tree. We have 3 A-frames. We have an Airstream. So we're trying to create an experience here, but during COVID,
and you're expanding even on that,
right? And so
tell us about that. Because you're talking weddings.
I'm talking weddings, venues. So and that's why we're teaming up, is to talk about that. And maybe there's some ways that we could work together. Like you shoot the wedding, and we host the wedding. And we can't do giant weddings. Our venue isn't giant. But we could do probably 100 people or less. We could probably get into that size. Yeah. And we have accommodations. The A-frames at Camp Little Tree are beautiful. They're on Airbnb.
They are beautiful. I've seen them. I've photographed some of them.
You did do that as a friend. That was so nice.
I did.
So nice.
So when you have a friend like Todd and you can help, it's nice to be able to do that.
I'm indebted, for sure.
I appreciate it because you were so helpful in when you sold me that camera. I had ridiculous questions, and you went way out of your way to help me understand the questions that I had.
You're giving me way too much credit.
Appreciate it.
You're giving me too much credit.
Because I knew Jack.
Oh well, I tell you what, I'm in such awe of your passion, and I think that's why we're here today, and I think that's why we're trying to come together and talk about things that are passionate. so other people get inspired, because everyone should be inspired. That's like super important.
I agree.
So last inspiration part of this whole conversation, which I want to share, is, and I call this the stunt loaf. So this is what we started doing during COVID. So when you do wood-fired pizza ovens, half the time you're making pizza, the other half you're making bread. And so I got a real passion for making bread. And so now we do sourdough bread baking classes, but we also sell sourdough, and we also do wood-fired pizza.
And those are on Saturdays, right? Is it every Saturday?
So it's the first Saturday of each month. We sell open to the public. And this is an example of a sourdough loaf that we do. And of course I picked out a pretty one, because they're not always this pretty, but this, for video, you gotta...
You didn't have to tell us that.
Yeah. And this one...
It's our very best.
I know, yes. So, but I think that what's so cool about bread and about coffee is they have some commonality. It's like people break bread, people drink coffee. It's like it's a conversation. And I think that bread, to me, always kind of spoke to me. Of course, pizza. I'm a huge pizza guy.
Favorite flavors?
I'm a cheese pizza guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a classic.
That's good.
But the bread too. I think that the bread is just another one of those things that it's a very simple thing, but it's such a beautiful, simple thing that a lot of people, the mass production has lost the love for it. And I just love the fact that we can do it in the authentic way. So we have this giant wood-fired oven that's all brick.
Noticing a theme here: wood fired.
We're into wood. We like wood, so that's our jam. So, but yeah, and I think that what it is experience, and I think that that's what you and I share, is that you capture the experience. I try to create the experience. You capture the experience. I think that is so rare that people recognize that. It's like I think that we have gotten to a point where everybody's on their phones, and this is the only experience they have. Well, if that's all they have, it's sometimes nice to actually go in person and see things, but you're creating that content. Actually, that's what you do, is you're creating the content. If they can't visit it, they can at least see it, on their phone or their computer.
Yeah.
And that memory, I think that's like so important. I think that creating the experience is important, but also capturing the experience and remembering that.
Both are so huge, because without living that experience, you miss out on a lot of life.
Huge.
I'm constantly talking with my kids. Hey guys, let's put our phones down or whatnot.
Yeah,
And
that's hard.
It is hard. I've been noticing I'm addicted to my phone, and I didn't think of it until about 2 weeks ago. Was talking with some people, and they brought that up, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've been doing a lot of Instagram posts, LinkedIn posts, Facebook posts, and then I started totaling up all the stuff that I'm doing. I'm like, oh,
you did it. Well, I hate it when the phone tells you how many hours you've spent a day on it. That's brutal.
1 million?
Yeah. So I think that we're getting back to that. I think that hopefully we're inspiring a new generation that, hey, get out there and do things, actually see it. And maybe by you capturing those moments, maybe they're inspiring them to go out and see it for themselves.
I hope so.
You're inspiring. I mean, and that's our job as business owners, as entrepreneurs or as artists, as we call it. And I always go back to do things that you're passionate about, but be responsible.
So, Todd, tell me, what makes a great cup of coffee?
That's a very good question. So I think that what is funny about coffee is that, and I think this new generation of coffee roasters tends to try to focus like on this narrow focus of, oh, this coffee tastes like blueberries, or this one tastes like chocolate, or and I think that that's awesome if you're a geek and you totally geek out on coffee.
Like Zoolander?
Yeah, exactly.
Orange mocha frappuccino?
Exactly.
Love that. So dumb.
I love the Zoolander. But I think that it's like we gotta like actually remember this one last thing that I think is more important. I try to just make a really good cup of coffee. That sounds really silly. I think what you're saying is it should be very well-rounded. It should have all the flavors. It shouldn't just be so one-dimensional, And I think that a lot of roasters fall victim to, oh, I really like this one because it has this flavor, but maybe that isn't what the average customer likes. The average customer likes a really good cup of coffee, so very well-rounded. It would be much like, and I use this analogy, if I was cooking just with pepper, and I didn't use salt, I didn't use garlic, I just cooked with pepper. Like you and I would say, oh, wow, that's very peppery, but it's lacking You know, so coffee needs to be well-rounded in order for it to appeal to the masses or appeal to most people. And I have a passion for coffee that's very well-rounded. So that's what makes a good cup of coffee. Is it should be.
I can agree to that.
Yeah, it should have all the notes, and they should all work in balance. So that's my big coffee.
Love that. All right.
Explanation. But
well, that was a great way to wrap it up.
It is. Thank you. Thank you,
next
Steven.
time.
Excellent, Steven. Thank you, brother.